8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Are we seeing both a revival in socialism and a revival in church attendance at the same time? What is going on? Huge turnout for Charlie Kirk's memorial. It was 2 months ago that he lost his life, assassinated publicly, right? And then you get huge turnout for his memorial. People are going to church in record numbers. And then socialists get elected in New York City. And progressives get elected in Virginia and New Jersey. And pro-abortion judges get elected in Pennsylvania. So what is going on in America right now? Well, a great piece written by Focus on the Family by Paul Batura, their Vice President of Communications. We're going to dive into a little bit later in the hour. America is simultaneously in revival and revolt. We'll get to that in a second, but let's go to the phone lines. We got Mary in Wyoming. Good morning, Mary. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yeah, good morning.
Hi, good morning. One of the things that on this discussion about the illegals that is missing is the history. After slavery, when we were free, we were off the plantation, but what happened to us? We ended up, because of, in other words, jobs, we weren't able to get. They established the Jim Crow laws, which, in other words, when I was growing up and going to school, I was living in government housing because we weren't allowed to buy property. We also, the jobs that we were limited to, we didn't have office jobs. The jobs we were limited to, I picked crops at 9 years old. And this is out of Washington State. And I remember the farmers would drop off the buses in the morning, we get on them, go pick crops all day, etc. So that we were the crop pickers of America, because those are the jobs that we'd had as slaves. We also, and so then when civil rights happened, that was when jobs opened up. And I remember when I got my first job in an office, I'll tell you one thing, it was Veterans Administration in the summer jobs program, so I was 16 years old. And I remember thinking, I'm no longer going to go back and pick those crops. And then, like I said, then as we started progressing, I chose to go in, the office route. But I'm saying we got job opportunities besides being janitors and cleaning houses. That's what I grew up with the expectation on what I was going to be. After that period of time, when that happened, that was when the farmers went and got the Mexicans. That was when, in other words, and like you said, at that time they were satisfied with coming in, picking crops and going home. Nowadays, you have over, and I think could all agree that there's at least 10 million illegals in this country that haven't committed crimes except for coming across the border. And those people, they now have encroached themselves like in meatpacking jobs, construction jobs, etc. Do you think that they're going to go back and want to pick crops?
No. And Mary, it sounds like the argument you're making is that this is just America's continued reliance on what I would say is dehumanizing labor.
I agree. Something has to be done about having a living wage. But I'm saying, my thing is about the immigration thing, as we're ending with, is because you can't have 10 million who want the same thing that you do unless you're giving them amnesty. And that's what I'm struggling with, because these people are not, you can keep saying, well, they have family and everything back there. They brought their family with them. The grandmas and stuff are here. They don't have to go back to Mexico, and they go back and visit a lot. So I'm just saying,
because the
these
system is
people are not
incentivized
wanting to leave. We have to force them out. We have to go ahead, and you cannot have 10 million people. We have immigration. We had a way to legally bring them in. They chose not to. But you cannot keep having this many people. And I mean, I think there will be some type of conflict between the illegals and citizens eventually. You're seeing it happen in England. I think what you're seeing there is what's going to be happening here.
Mary, great call.
Yeah,
sure
thanks for the
appreciate
call.
your perspective and your
Yeah.
lived experience.
It worries me if we're going the direction of England as far as how they're dealing with migration and migrants. And the only reason I say that is because there have been stories of violence that has happened throughout England based on reports that were wrong. And what I mean by that is, and I forget the name of the town, but there was a small riot inside of a town because of a false report that a migrant had abused some local children. And so people got together and went around just beating up everybody else that they thought were migrants, and they burned things and broke things down, and the story wasn't true. So I'd be really, really worried if we start getting to that point of where Europe and England is with migrants right now. That would really worry me deeply about where we are as a society. I hope that's not true, Mary. But
your concern is not just against the violence against migrants, but also the violence that migrants can bring against the residents, right?
Yes, however, that we have seen that American-born citizens on par per capita create more violence on our own people rather than the illegal migrants. And I'm not advocating for illegal migrants and keeping the people that are criminals here. I think we absolutely can get rid of them, but that's a systemic
But
thing.
in Europe, you've seen migrant crime against the people there, haven't you? Have you seen those reports?
Yes, I have. But again,
Yeah.
same thing holds true. That the native population per capita does more violence on themselves than the migrant workers. And I think that's part of the problem, is that these reports of this migrant crime wave lead to things like, when I hear a story that isn't true about migrants committing a crime, I'm going to assume it is true because of all those dirty, dirty migrants, and I know they're criminals anyway, so now we have to go teach them a lesson. That's what I'm worried about, is getting to that place as a society.
I think that happens in societies when borders aren't respected and law enforcement doesn't do their job. And government, particularly politicians, prevent law enforcement from doing their job. And you oftentimes then see citizens having to take it into their own hands. All right, we've got Paul Batura, Vice President of Communications for the Daily Citizen, Focus on the Family. Coming up, he's got an article, America's Simultaneously in Revival and Revolt. Now is time, though, for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hey, good morning. It is Wednesday, 41 with some clouds and some blue sky in Denver. Gorgeous sunrise this morning, expecting a high of 65 today. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story.
Now they're like, oh, yeah, well, we burned the house down and we wish it was still burning. I mean, that's essentially what is happening here with the shutdown. It's just crazy.
Congressman Jeff Crank on the show last hour. The Schumer shutdown could come to an end tonight as the House is to vote on a funding measure. Overnight, the House Rules Committee voted along party lines to advance a government funding deal that's already passed in the Senate. A final vote is set for after 5 o'clock Mountain Time.
They're acting like children and don't seem to care. I walked into the Capitol this morning. I saw a couple of the Capitol police officers. And I said, hey, we're going to get you paid this week. It's going to happen. And, they just smiled and they were excited. But look, I mean, how can you say you care about people and you're doing this for them, but at the same time, you're okay with people like this, who are Capitol police officers, our ICE agents, these air traffic controllers and TSA agents who have been working all this time without a paycheck. Come on, this is silly. So let's end it.
Agree. Flight delays and cancellations are impacting travelers across the U.S. Once again, flights have been cut since Friday by the FAA. As of last check, over 500 flights have been delayed and over 800 have been canceled today. Nearly half the country could see the northern lights this week. NOAA has issued a severe geomagnetic storm alert as it reports at least 21 states could see the aurora borealis, including here in Colorado. Billy enjoyed the show last night, and I hear northwest of Fort Collins is a good spot this evening, possibly. The light show has been reported as far south as Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and even some parts in North Florida. Well, Tucker was correct. He said that Charlie Kirk wanted him to go all in on being critical of the Israeli government. Megyn Kelly actually found a video of all three of them backstage at a recent event, and you can hear when you watch it on social media, Charlie telling Tucker to, quote, go Max on telling the truth on the Israeli government. So Tucker did, and Megyn talked about it last night.
And so it's one of the many reasons why I really object to this attempt to otherize, snuff out the voice of Tucker Carlson. Charlie knew exactly where Tucker stood on these issues and wanted him, and I quote, to go Max. The answer to what is happening right now on the conservative half of the aisle is not to silence Tucker, to diminish him to the point where he doesn't have followers. Not that that's possible, you lunatics, or to try to delegitimize Tucker. If anything, Tucker is a remaining voice for Charlie, whose views were changing himself. So I have nothing against Ben saying all the things he feels, or more neo-Connie people feeling that, or pro-Israel people saying all. I think they should say that, and I understand perfectly where they're coming from. But there is another reasoned, passionate point of view, and Tucker represents that. And that's what he's been doing on his show. It rubbed some people the wrong way, but it didn't rub Charlie the wrong way. In fact, he wanted more of it.
Hear, hear.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
So it's important to try to understand Charlie's ability to coalition build, okay? Because I watched Candace's piece on the way up to Rifle yesterday, so I listened to it. And I'm watching people, and it reminds me a lot of the battles that happen within the state Republican Party, right? This effort to stake out territory, this effort to cancel those that you disagree with. And I was a coalitions guy for Santorum. I was Romney's chief coalitions guy in Colorado. Being a coalitions guy is your skill set is the ability to keep people that tend to get worked up focused on a common goal, which was stopping the radical left and winning elections. Right? Like, that's what it comes down to.
Sure.
Right? You want to win so that Republicans have power. If you're on the other side, you want to win so Democrats have power. But that's the point. And to get the leadership elected, personnel is policy. We can advance our policies when we win. And Democrats in Colorado understand this better. What you see happening right now is that anchor that Charlie had with people that he could disagree with, right? And I think I have this ability, and I think Bill has this ability. It's like we can passionately disagree and not hate each other. We can passionately disagree and not think you need to be canceled, you need to be removed, you need to be pulled out of the Republican Party, for instance. I mean, I go and speak to Republicans all over the state, and I'm often, what do you think of Britta? What do you think of Dave Williams? And I go, I don't think... I think of them as part of an effort to try to stop Democrats. And I just don't get pulled into it. Charlie had that ability on these issues, okay? He could support Israel and not feel that Tucker's criticism of Israel resulted in Tucker absolutely having to be canceled. Okay?
Correct.
That is a coalition skill set to keep, because in politics you get people that are very passionate and think that for us to win, people in the movement that aren't as pure as us, people that aren't as, like the pro-life movement, for instance, in Colorado is this way, where like I fought every pro-life battle in this state, but because I don't believe in passing a law that's going to imprison women tomorrow that have had abortions in the past, I'm not pro-life enough. I get like that criticism comes.
Sure.
So you in politics, you get these really passionate people who see things differently and then sometimes get to a place where they feel like the only way to win is to cancel anybody that's near them. It doesn't mean that Charlie was anti-Israel. It meant that Charlie was trying to keep a conservative, fractured, sometimes heated coalition together and keep them focused on what the real goal is, which is stopping the left. So that's what I see in all this. That's what I see in Candace. It's what happens when that center coalition, center of gravity disappears because Charlie was assassinated. Now that anchor that was able to kind of keep people focused on what really needed to be gone or fought is gone, and now they're all turning in on each other, and it's just like,
I see. I've been watching this closely because I wanted to see it from the beginning to where we are now. So I've been watching. What is this, like 2 months now? Yeah, over 2 months.
Yeah.
Of these shows, and I could make you a bracket of who's like a March Madness bracket, who's kind of going against who is contradicting whom, and what have you. But
you could do that with the state party too. You could do that with the pro-life movement.
No, it's the same thing. It is the same thing. I find those bozos just almost just too hard to swallow at times. But with Charlie, to me, and I mean some of the crazies here in this state, but he was seeking the truth, clarity. That's all he did, man. He was extremely clear, concise, and he went after the truth. And sometimes the truth is difficult because it doesn't fit our narrative, like my narrative, at times. And you want it all packaged nicely. And he was, it's pretty obvious that he was objective with Israel. He was seeking the truth, and he loved Israel.
But Blake, at the same time,
and the history.
I will say that I think Candace is trafficking in weird conspiracies, though, because I listened to her, and it's like, she went after Lance Wallnau and his uncle being in the Air Force, and saying that this was now an effort to kill Charlie. I'm like,
absolutely.
So
now,
that's where I think.
No, what she claims is she's asking questions, which is true. She's just asking questions.
Come on.
However, her tone, I would agree with you. Here's where tone, because I get in arguments with my wife all the time about this with tone, and I'm like, I don't care about tone. All right, all I care about is substance. Now, her tone, man. I mean, she drives me insane. I mean, however, I have to sit back and say to myself, oftentimes, listening to her, especially the past 2 months, saying, well, she has a point. She has a point.
This is where you and I are going to disagree. But we got to get to Paul Batura.
Yeah.
So let's get to Paul, and then we'll continue this.
Okay, I'm gonna send it back to you. It's interesting. 38 in Highlands Ranch, 39 in Thornton, 40 in Denver. And you're waking up with Jeff and Bill. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Unseasonably warm November weather will take us through Friday. Then we're going to see some changing weather this weekend, especially late in the weekend and into early next week. But until then, mild Pacific air will dominate. We're going to be 60s to near or better than 70 today, tomorrow, and Thursday. Still very mild, well into the 60s Friday. Through Friday, dry, a mix of high clouds and sun. Nights not bad, 30s to lower 40s. Increasingly cloudy and trending cooler over the weekend, increasing chances for showers. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Great piece out of the Daily Citizen. By the way, if you don't know about this, this is the daily publication of Focus on the Family that covers news, political comings and goings, cultural commentary, all that stuff takes place at the Daily Citizen. Great analysis there. Go to dailycitizen.focusonthefamily.com to see that. This one titled, America is Simultaneously in Revival and Revolt. It's written by Paul Batura, Vice President of Communications for Focus on the Family, but basically provides a unique perspective on, I think, what is happening out there. On one hand, you see these like record baptisms that are taking place. You saw the Charlie Kirk Memorial, millions of people, the proclamation of the gospel, young people returning to church. And then last week, socialists get elected. Socialists in New York, pro-abortion judges, pro-abortion governors. So what is going on in America? With some thoughts on this, Paul Batura joins the Jeff and Bill Show. Thanks, Paul, for your time this morning.
Yes, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Jeff, good to be with you again. And Bill, nice to talk with you.
So talk to us a little bit about this dynamic happening in American culture. I often joke kind of half-heartedly, but it's not really a joke, that we're two nations fighting over the same land. That seems to be kind of reflected in your article here.
I think that's right. And I think it speaks to the fact that cultural battles generally are not a zero-sum game. You can see progress on one, and then, the old adage, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think in theological terms, we would call this maybe an antinomy. If you remember that term, it's an apparent contradiction. And yet, at the same time, there's progress being made. And yet, man, there is a lot of work to be done, because we're not just trying to win temporary victories. We're trying to change hearts and minds. And clearly, election results showed that there is a lot of work left to be done. And I'm not even talking from a partisan standpoint. I'm just talking about from a cultural, do you really believe what you really say you believe? Clearly, that doesn't come out in the ballot box, and we've been battling that with the life issue. I mean, my goodness, we claim we're a pro-life. The younger generation is pro-life. You go to Washington on the March for Life, and you see busloads of kids, and yet poll after poll comes out that young people still see that abortion should be a right. So, I mean, these are ongoing battles, right?
That's Paul Batura, Vice President of Communications for Focus on the Family. Now, Paul, I often say I talk to progressives probably more than any other conservative in Colorado. I have a 4-hour talk show every single morning where they call in 5 days a week and we discuss things. I go down to the rallies. And I see among socialists almost like a religious commitment. They believe that they're being compassionate, and the best way to be compassionate is to tax people and allow the government to provide services. So I don't think it's a battle between people who are religious and people who are non-religious. I see on the left almost a religious devotion to tenets of socialism, and it's rooted in an idea that they believe they're being compassionate as a result of it. What do you think about that?
Well, no, I think what you see is accurate. I've seen your videos. I mean, they're kind of startling to those of us, who don't swim in those waters. But, as you were saying, that reminded me, Rush Limbaugh had a great line that he used to say, if you catch a liberal in a thoughtful moment, you'll have a convert for life. And I know that's an insult to people who think left, but I do think there's a lack of critical thinking. I mean, they can believe all that they want. Our founder, Jim Dobson, wrote a book, Emotions, Can You Trust Them? And his main premise was, we can't trust our emotions. Just because you feel something doesn't make it true. And yet, we are raising a generation of people, a lot of young people, who feel their feelings are just as valid as the facts. And that's where parents have a tremendous job, to be able to help their kids discern. And, Jeff, you've said it so well that, one of the reasons we're in this mess is because the public school system is such a mess. I mean, these kids are being indoctrinated on a, hour by hour basis for, dozens of hours every week. It's no wonder they come out confused, conflicted, and, a walking contradiction.
Well, and I wonder, Paul Batura, Vice President of Communications, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the battle in the public square is a moral and religious battle that's taking place. So oftentimes we think it's politics, or we need to get better candidates, or we need to do better messaging, or we need to, buy more mailers or whatever to try to win elections. And as I go down there, what I'm seeing is not necessarily a battle over economics. I'm not seeing a reasonable discourse on policy and the appropriate tax levels. What I'm seeing is morality battling another vision of morality, right? So when you talk to a progressive who's a socialist, the reason we need to get the government to provide these services is because people will starve if we don't, or there won't be health care if we don't, or if we don't educate the kids, then nobody else will. So they're coming into the public square with essentially a religious argument as opposed to a economic argument. And then at the same time, you're having a revival in Christianity, which is a religious thing. So I guess it's just that the political battles, I think as Charlie Kirk pointed out, are actually battles over morality, battles over religious worldview. What do you think?
Yeah, you're getting at the foundational level of what this is. And I think, for those of us who hold to that worldview, everything stems from what we believe ultimately, eternally, and where our faith lies. And you're right. I mean, I was strafed a couple weeks ago, or actually just last week, because the article was taken out of context by someone. I asked the question, should all voters be paying for all students' lunches? And this writer decided to take it out of context and suggest that I was saying that no voters should pay for anyone's lunches. And, the reality is, there is a compassion and there is a need. And what I was simply trying to do was to argue worldview. Should the government be stepping in where charity and where, real need is not being met? And, that's a debatable thing. But this individual, strafed me for not showing my faith, because I wasn't willing to pay for everyone's student lunches, which is just beyond me. I think 20 years ago, we would not have been having this argument. Yeah. But there is this misplaced compassion that we're dealing with. And it's really, to me, a lack of thoughtful discourse and really lack of critical thinking.
That's Paul Batura, Vice President of Communications. I know you've got to jump here in just a minute. What's your encouragement to Christians, particularly in the public square right now, who are watching people with socialist beliefs win elections? What should Christians do?
Well, they need to get involved. They need to stay involved if they are. I wrote yesterday about, we're all in a revolution. Choose your revolution. I mean, there's a sexual revolution that's been going on for 60 years, probably longer. But, there's an education revolution. There is a morality, a spiritual revolution. You can't avoid it. It's not a matter of should I join. You're in it, and choose your sides. And this is not a partisan comment, but you need to advocate for what you believe, and you need to be on the side of the Lord. If you're not on the side of the Lord, what's the point?
Paul Batura, Vice President of Communications, Focus on the Family. Be sure to follow him, especially on LinkedIn. He's got some great writings he does on a daily basis over there. PaulBatura.com. That's BATURA.com. Paul, some great thinking over at the Daily Citizen, and I hope people are regularly tuning in there. But thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate
thanks a lot.
it.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, Bill. Great to be with you.
All right, we'll get to the phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Phone lines are hot as Bill and I cover everything from immigration to socialism to the government shutdown. Just jump in at this point. Why not? All right, we got Marie, Bill.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Marie is calling us from Denver. Good morning, Marie.
Good morning, Bill. I want to say something positive because the next thing I say may sound negative. You all do marvelous interviews of important people, candidates, public officials. It's all Republican, but that's because the Democrats won't come on, and it's their loss, and it's our loss. So you really,
Marie, that was nice.
Okay, but when the two of you were
that famous but, yes.
morning, when you were discussing migration, there was a lot of history that you're not aware of. And I'll tell you, first of all, for Billy, you need to look at the Galstan Purchase, Galstan.
Okay, writing it down.
Okay, 1848. We annexed a large part of Mexico. Well, that's not true. It wasn't a large part of Mexico. But our borders were set between the United States and Mexico with that purchase. And there were Mexican citizens that were on our side of the border, and they became U.S. citizens. So we have Mexicans whose ancestry is Mexican, who have been American citizens longer than some of us ancestors have. And it's really important to know, then to wonder, what were their continued links with family in Mexico? What is the sociology of that whole area? I don't know. But I do know that Galstan Purchase is incredibly important. And for you, Jeff, I have a name I'd like you to look up, and it's Cesar Chavez.
And somebody already called me him today.
Okay, then do you know what he did, who he was?
Yeah, he worked for immigrant rights.
No, he doesn't. No. Now he...
I thought he worked for their pay and better treatment.
Exactly.
And, the migrants.
But he was for...
That wasn't their right?
Exactly. But they weren't immigrants. They were U.S. citizens.
Oh, I thought they were migrants that came up and moved around and stuff like that.
Exactly. And one of the... Initially...
Wait, migrants aren't immigrants?
U.S. citizens. And
only U.S. citizens? He only worked for U.S. citizens?
You need to read, because I want to be real careful not to distort his history, because ultimately his movement did embrace civil rights for everybody. But he was very concerned about migrants, illegal migrants coming in, because he was trying to get a living wage for farm workers. And the illegal migrants who were coming in were making it difficult. They were competing with his goal of getting, so he's a great man. And
he was adamantly opposed to illegal immigration.
You need to you need to look at it, because I had to be real careful, because I didn't call earlier, because I tried to look it up so I wouldn't make mistakes.
Yeah, he made the argument that the illegal immigrants were pushing down all the wages for legal farm workers.
Exactly. For legal.
Interesting.
Yeah, yes. And he wanted a living wage. It was the union. He had a union of farm workers. In the end of the 60s, into the 70s, we had lettuce boycotts and grape boycotts to support his work. Okay? Now,
that's why they called me the radio version of Cesar Chavez. Because I'm defending the workers here.
Exactly, but you called them migrants, and they were U.S. citizens. And
you're right. I stand corrected.
Okay, so you need to read some more about that, because a lot of what you were saying, he would have agreed with, okay? So that's all I want to say.
Marie.
Cesar Chavez.
I appreciate that.
You, Marie.
And Marie, you had Jeff going right up until the fact that you mentioned the unions. And then he went, oh, God, oh, no, can't do that. No, can't do that one. Oh, God. Marie, thanks for the phone call. So close. It's so far.
We should get Jeff Hunt and Cesar Chavez for president.
There we go.
Right?
We've also got David from California is next up on our list today, Jeff.
Good morning, David. You're on with
Good
Jeff
morning, David.
Yeah, morning. Yeah, she raises an interesting point. If you ever read the book, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, here's Julius Caesar, goes around, captures all sorts of amazing territory, And he captures it and captures it and captures it. And then he leaves behind injured soldiers to maintain the newly captured lands. And those guys knew nothing about maintenance of a nation. Yeah. And so they mismanaged it. They were just drunks, and they allowed horrible atrocities to happen to the newly found slaves. Instead of calling them citizens, they called them slaves, and they treated them like crap. And so what she raises in that call is that America conquered a land or bought it. And then the people, instead of being treated like citizens, they get treated like crap. And anybody going on either side of that line is considered suspicious. And so Julius Caesar gets killed in the long run because so many of these lands that were conquered were given over to these corrupt generals and inept generals.
And they Colorado's that way? I mean, Colorado, I think, was part of that purchase, wasn't it?
Oh, well, the previous caller was talking about a smaller portion, but in the bigger picture, in the bigger picture, you either manage it right or you manage it wrong. And Julius Caesar got killed because he managed it wrong. All of these corrupt generals killed him because they wanted to have it for spoils of war instead of having a larger nation, if you wanted to call it a nation or empire. So the idea that America is, instead of making friends with Canada and Mexico, it's treating them as both enemies. And that gets into the real reason I called your interview 2 interviews ago. America is being tricked, and tricked in a bad way. If you look at Roger Stone and Paul Manafort, they managed coups. They ran 11 coups and had 6 successes. They had 6 coups that worked and 5 that failed. And then Trump hires Manafort and Stone to get him elected in 2015, and they know how to divide a nation. They've been doing it for 40 years, over 40 years now. And the idea that Trump is, he's all of a sudden going to allow 600,000 Chinese visas into America. He's going to give a military base.
Who's behind the coup, in your mind?
Trump is more of a currency speculator, and he has no loyalty to the U.S. dollar. He has no loyalty to the U.S. economy. Currency speculators bounce the currency just so they can make short-term gain, but they cause long-term havoc. You know, if you're a farmer and you're dealing with weather issues and your crop is going to be based upon whatever nature gives you, and then all of a sudden somebody tells you that the value of the U.S. dollar is worth crap because somebody badmouths it long enough to ruin the value of the U.S. dollar, then millions of farmers go broke. And millions of people that work in the real world go broke. So Donald Trump is a currency speculator, and Paul Manafort and Roger Stone work for mining companies and huge industrial corporations that want to conquer lands for personal gain, and they don't have loyalty to the country. They only have loyalty to short-term gain so that they can have their minerals cross the international borders at the cheapest rate. And they so this is historical, and it's sad to see people getting tricked time and time again by Roger Stone and Paul Manafort.
All right, those were not on my bingo cards for this morning, but I appreciate the call.
That was nice. Thanks, David.
Paul Manafort. Do you ever see that meme of the guy that is like the conspiracy with the red?
Oh yes. Yeah, there's
that's where we went.
Yeah, there was a guy that I watch online that uses that
immigration to where else did we go? To
currency
Paul
speculation.
Manafort,
Yeah,
to currency speculation.
That was a good call though. Yeah.
All right.
I know.
There we go. All right. You want to do one more? Or
Yeah,
you
let's do
want to take
one
a
more.
break?
Let's squeeze in David from Golden, and after that, Eddie from Littleton is up. So David and Golden's
Full
up
lines.
next.
Love
yeah.
it. All right, David, you're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning, gentlemen. And Jeff, that means you too. So,
Nice one.
first of all, I like that Marie brought up about Cesar Chavez. That describes my family. We were northern New Mexico, southern Colorado natives, and that used to be part of Mexico. My grandparents on both sides spoke Spanish. I got to learn it in the construction industry, so I know all the bad words. But yeah, that was a good history lesson from Marie. So thank you. But the Chamber of Commerce National Chamber of Commerce has always been a promoter of illegal immigration because they liked the cheap labor. And the National Chamber of Commerce has always been associated more with the Republicans than with the Democrats.
Sure.
So I think it's just opportunistic. I don't think it's a party. Well, it may have been a party line, but it's just an opportunity.
You saw Trump kind of rebel against the Chamber of Commerce style of Republicanism.
Oh yeah, I get that.
You know,
but
yeah,
has their power gone down? It's like the NRA. Their lobbying power is immense. So
yeah. But here's the thing that I saw conservatives move towards. There was a book written by Kass, Kass was his last name, about that properly describes, I think, a lot of the frustration that people have with this kind of globalist, cheap labor outsourcing that's taking place over the last 30, 40 years in America, is that we have, someone once described it as, we have basements full of cheap Chinese crap, but no one can buy a home, nobody can move up in their wages, everything else has seemed to stall. So there seems to be real flaws in that kind of Chamber of Commerce, U.S. Chamber. I'm not talking about like local Chamber of Commerce. I'm talking U.S. Chamber of Commerce right across from the White House push for globalism. I think that had problems.
Yep, I agree with you. So
yeah, well, there you go.
And then my second point is, if we are truly call ourselves Christian, isn't there a socialistic, what's the word I'm looking for? A socialistic need to take care of our brother, and that's why we are Christian, and therefore it should be part of our desire to be good Christians. It's just so.
Well, I would encourage you, because that's
not
popped up. Good friend Lawrence Reed wrote a book, Was Jesus a Socialist? I would strongly encourage you to go check it out, because I do see, particularly among progressives, this moralistic and moralism that takes place. And look, von Mises dealt with this over 100 years ago around socialism as well. Is this moralistic argument that pops up that if we don't take care of people, then they're going to die in the streets, type of thing. No, Jesus was not a socialist. And I actually think that the call to Christians to care for the poor is an individualistic and a deeply strong call, a bold call to care. In fact, if you read Scripture, and I'm not talking about your salvific, are you going to go to heaven or not, but you are going to be judged based upon what you do, and your judgment throughout the New Testament is rooted in your treatment of the poor. You are exactly right. What you don't see anywhere in Scripture is we forcefully use the government to tax somebody and then use that money to care for the poor. That doesn't happen anywhere. And that's why I think Jesus was not a socialist. But we got to get to a break. Great call. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks for the call.
We'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader. Eddie, you're up next. We are 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Phone lines are hot. Let's go back to Eddie in Littleton. Good morning, Eddie. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. I guess I'd like to address this to all the travelers having trouble and the government shutdown. I don't know if it ever came up on your show, but here are some facts about the air traffic controllers. The average salary is $146,000 a year, average. After 3 years, they get 20 vacation days, 13 sick days, 11 paid holidays. They can retire at age 50 with a full pension, and they get the extra benefit because they had such a stressful job. They can retire at $61,000 a year, and they get all their health care benefits paid for until they turn 65 or 62, I guess. So when you get your handkerchiefs out and weep for these federal workers, I'd like to ask one question for the audience. How many people out there, if they could get the deal to say, hey, you can take 6 weeks off, you still get your health care, and at the end of 6 weeks vacation, we're going to guarantee to pay you everything you would have earned? How many people in the private sector would say, give me that deal? So
yeah, I think you just did a really good job advertising for them. We heard from Jeff Crank that they're having a hard time filling the jobs. I don't have a problem paying. I mean, gosh, you want to talk about like what's more important of a job out there? I'd be hard pressed to find stuff more important than an air traffic controller. But no, I'm glad I like that.
Yeah,
I think that's great pay, great benefits. I wasn't crying for them missing a paycheck.
Yeah, but also, Eddie, they did show up at the time, too, so they didn't necessarily get a 6-week vacation. They didn't. In fact, Trump was talking about giving bonuses of $10,000 to those that did show up. I mean, the most of them did show up. A lot of them didn't get that 6-week vacation you were talking about.
The reason we're having air traffic problems right now is that people didn't show up. They brought it on them. They brought it on purposely, and I would fire them myself. But in any case, I don't have.
Why would you fire them
whatsoever?
Why would you fire them?
They know
if they didn't show up,
get paid. They know they're going to get paid. They got a deluxe deal.
Well, Eddie, hang on a sec. Let's examine that. Eddie, hang on a sec. Let's examine whether or not the air traffic controllers knew they were going to get paid. And the reason I think this is important is during the early portions of the negotiation, President Trump and the White House said he didn't think any of those workers should be paid. He said some of them will, but he's not sure, and some of them don't deserve to. So the White House itself, but I know, but again, the idea being the White House floated the idea that some of y'all are not going to get your money. He didn't say, oh, air traffic controllers, I got your back. He didn't say that.
Hold on. You're criticizing Trump for not being detail-oriented?
I know. Surprise. That's who knew? Eddie, thanks for the phone call, man. I appreciate it.
Right. We'll continue. Yeah. Join the conversation. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Where else do you get conversations like this? We are Denver's talk leader for a reason. Thanks for